So HONOR is back with a new version of the MagicBook 14. It's a new compact laptop with some decent specs and even a dedicated GPU. The HONOR MagicBook 14 is the new laptop offering from HONOR, which aims to deliver better performance in a more compact size, and it should appeal to normal users, productivity users, as well as the gamers. Now, full disclosure, before we get started on the video, this is sponsored by HONOR and they've sent me the laptop for free to review for you guys, but that of course does not change my opinions. So we're going to start off with the specs, then we're going to go through the benchmarks, the design, the general features, and then the pros and cons of the MagicBook 14. So the HONOR MagicBook 14, as you may have guessed by the name, has a 14-inch display. We get a resolution of 2160 by 1440 and an aspect ratio of 3:2, and this is a 60Hz panel. Now the display is 300 nits and the bezels are relatively small for a compact laptop, and we've also got a 720p webcam placed inside the top bezel. It's powered by the Intel i5-12500H, and this is a pretty decent CPU with 12 cores, 16 threads and a max turbo frequency of 4.5 GHz, so it's going to breeze through your everyday tasks. We get the NVIDIA RTX 2050 GPU, which means we don't have to rely on internal graphics, but there is also a version without the 2050 for those of you that don't need it and want to save some money. We get 16GB of DDR5 memory and a 75Wh battery that supports 135W supercharge for the RTX 2050 model, and then 65W fast charging for the integrated graphics version. With the 135W fast charge, you can fully charge the laptop from 0 to 100% in just 80 minutes. We also do get this 135W fast charger bundled in the packaging, and if you've got an HONOR smartphone like the Magic 4 Pro, then you can use this to utilize the phone's full fast charge capabilities as well. Now we get a 512GB Samsung SSD, and the laptop comes pre-installed with Windows 11 Home. Now when it comes to the design, it's relatively compact, measuring in at 307.51mm long, 227.56mm wide, and then 16.9mm thick. It's made of an aircraft grade aluminium chassis and it weighs approximately 1.54 kilograms. Now it's a relatively simple design with the HONOR logo in the center of the display lid, and overall it does feel very well built. Opening it up, we've got a nice stiff hinge that opens nice and smoothly, there's no flexing of any parts and it does feel nice and sturdy. We've got a good sized keyboard with 2 levels of backlit keys for those of you that do use your laptops in the dark, and on the top right we've got a power button which is also a fingerprint scanner. Now the trackpad is also a decent size and it works well. The cursor moves nice and smoothly, and while personally I always plug in a mouse and use that with a laptop, it's nice to have a good trackpad there for when you do need it. Now over on the right hand side we've got a mini HDMI port along with the USB-A port, and then over on the left we've got 2 USB-C ports along with a 3.5mm jack for your headphones. First up, we're going to check out the performance with synthetic benchmarks and we'll see how it performs. Now with the MagicBook 14, you can switch between a smart power mode or a performance mode, and for all of these benchmarks I've of course had it in the performance mode. Now something to note here as well, you can only use performance mode when it's plugged into the power, and the minute you unplug it, it's going to automatically switch to the smart power. On Cinebench R23, I ran both 10-minute tests, and we scored 12,133 for multi-core and then 1,712 for single. Now these are respectable scores and what I'd expect to see from this CPU. On Geekbench 5, we scored 1,644 for single core and then 10,623 for multi, and then on the OpenCL benchmark we scored 50,004, and this was of course using the RTX 2050 and not the integrated graphics. On the Heaven benchmark with the default settings, we score 1,724. We've got an average of 68.4 frames per second with a minimum of 25.2 and a maximum of 157.1. The GPU temperature throughout the Heaven benchmark also stayed at a steady 70 to 71 degrees. If we head over to Crystal Diskmark, we've got some great scores here with a sequential read speed of 6,790 megabytes per second for this 512GB Samsung SSD. Now the hard drive is split into 2 partitions on your computer screen. You get 119GB for your C Windows drive and then 341GB for the D data drive, with the rest saved for recovery. Now I also tested the cold boot of this drive and it boots in just 8 seconds from pressing the power button to hitting the Windows logon screen. Out of the 16GB of DDR5 RAM, we have 15.7GB of usable memory, and when it comes to temperatures throughout the benchmark test, I had core temperatures that peaked at about 99 degrees, but this was only briefly before HONOR's dual fan cooling system kicks in, and throughout the benchmark processing, the CPU core temperature was an average of about 79 degrees. So overall, it's some great performance from such a compact laptop. Now in terms of features, of course, I'm not going to go through everything that Windows 11 does, as you'll probably already know, but we do have some HONOR specific features that I found to be very useful. We can use the function keys to enable or disable the webcam, and when the webcam is physically being used, we've also got a white indicator LED in the top bezel that just lets us know it's currently on. The webcam quality is fine, it's only a 720p webcam, so we don't expect much, but you can see it's good enough for video calls or meetings, and it's nice to have it in the top bezel instead of the previous versions which placed it on a key on the keyboard. Now we've also got noise cancellation to better pick up your voice if you are doing meetings and video calls, so we're just going to take a look at the webcam sample now. So this is the video and audio from the 720p webcam. I've also left my window wide open as I live on a busy road, so that'll give you an idea of the noise cancellation. But as you can see, it's 720p for your video calls and meetings. It does a good enough job. We also have a shortcut for HONOR's PC manager, and to be fair, there is some useful stuff in here. The homepage has useful shortcuts. We can see we've got things like a full scan of the laptop, we've got the option to switch power modes, although you can also use the function and P shortcut. Now we've got hardware info, device clone if you're upgrading from an old laptop and want to transfer your files over, and then we've also got a phone backup. Now the most interesting on this page, in my opinion, is the multi-screen collaboration. This of course is for multi-screen use, but it can be used with a TV, a laptop, or even an HONOR phone. If we try with the phone quickly, all we have to do is tap the phone on the laptop for the NFC tagging, and we can then see and interact with our phone on screen. We've also got HONOR Share, which is great for transferring files wirelessly between your devices, and I find this especially useful for taking photos on the phone, then quickly getting them on the PC and putting them straight into Photoshop. We also have the snipping tool on the function keys, and I'm very happy to see this as it's something that I use a lot of the time, and it makes it quick and easy to do. We've got the power button with the fingerprint scanner built in, and fingerprint unlock works very well every time, and it's much easier than having to input a pin every time I wake up my laptop. We can also use function key and spacebar to turn on the key backlights. We've got two levels of backlights here, and it does nicely light up the keys without any light bleed. Now of course, this model has a dedicated GPU, so it is geared towards productivity and even gaming, but it's also great for media. Playing 4K 60 frames a second video, it looks great, and it gives you the full smooth playback you'd expect. Through media players, it just plays everything perfectly. Next, I opened up some 4K 60 frames a second footage on YouTube, and again it plays smoothly with 0 frames dropped in the Edge browser, but then when doing the same thing in Chrome, I noticed it did drop a couple of frames when it was initially opening the video, but then after that it plays perfectly with no frames dropped at all. When it comes to the speakers, this is of course a compact laptop, so we can't expect too much, but they do go loud enough though, and I was fine using these speakers for movies during my recent trip to IFA in Berlin. We'll just take a look at the video playback samples now.
Oh my god, I'm dead!
You're not dead, you've just been separated from your physical form.
My physical... What?
How are you doing that?
I have no idea.
You should not be able to do that.
This feels amazing.
Did I show you a picture of me? Yeah, you look old. Kid, you take one step closer. You're gonna leave me no choice.
When it comes to productivity, I'm an Adobe user and I found this has worked very well for my editing. In my Premiere Pro timeline, I can play back my 4K footage in full resolution on the timeline. There's no issues with freezing or stuttering. If I add multiple 4K videos on top of each other and then preview them all at the same time, things do get choppier and we have to reduce that preview resolution for playback, but of course this is always to be expected. Overall though, my editing experience on this laptop has been great and I've had no complaints at all. The dedicated graphics really helps to make this a usable productivity laptop without any lag or frustrations. In Photoshop, it's exactly the same story. I use high resolution images in my Photoshop files, and everything is smooth from masking to transformations, and it's just been a pleasure to edit photos on. I've also used this for some 3D modeling, and as you can see, with no textures, playback is pretty smooth with only a few dropped frames. Now this is good if you do want to do some modeling on the go, and then you can just save your files for rendering when you get home. Now for the gamers out there, it's also a great portable gaming machine. I started off with Rocket League and I ran it at the full resolution of 2160 by 1440 as it is a less demanding game, and as you can see, it plays smoothly. The frame rate is sticking above 100 frames a second for the most part, and although we do get the occasional drop, it never drops below 90. It's an older game, so I was expecting it to run well, but to be honest, it has surpassed my expectations. With a 60Hz display on the MagicBook 14, this means that we are utilizing the full 60Hz, and of course there's also the option to add an external display with a higher refresh rate if that's what you want. Next up, if we head over to Call of Duty Warzone, which is of course a much more demanding game. Now in this game, the frame rate jumps around a lot depending on the area you're in at the time, but in the full Warzone mode, the lowest I saw was about 55 frames a second, with the frame rate sticking around 60 and even jumping as high as 70 or 80 in some less populated areas. Now I had the field of view set to 80 with most settings set to high, and you can see the exact settings that I've used here. Now I've set this to 1080p, but of course you may prefer a slightly different resolution given the 3:2 aspect ratio of the display. Playing with these settings played great, although there was the occasional bit of screen tearing, so I enabled VSync and the problem went away. Now, this is actually a great experience for gaming, and it means you can play some more demanding games, just of course you need to be realistic and don't expect to be playing some demanding games at any more than 1080p. Even using the laptop speakers instead of the headphones, it was an enjoyable experience and great for gaming.
Enemy dropping into the AO.
So overall, I'm impressed with this laptop. Whatever you need, it's going to be able to help you, whether it be work or play on the go. We've got a well-built aluminium chassis with some great power and decent cooling, and of course, the option to buy with or without an RTX 2050 is good, as if you don't need the more powerful GPU, then you still have a choice. The battery life has also been great, but of course, it's hard to give you all the data, as there's so many variations that will affect the battery life. If you're performing intensive tasks or using the dedicated GPU over the integrated one, then you're going to drain it a lot faster. Now it would have been nice to see an SD card reader on the laptop, or maybe even a couple of extra USB ports for those that do use a lot of external peripherals, but of course you can just use a USB hub, and all in all it's a great buy. HONOR are trying to make a name for themselves over multiple markets by delivering high performance at a good cost, and I think, to be fair, they've done it again here. The new HONOR MagicBook 14 was launched at IFA, and for the integrated graphics model it's €1,099, and then for this dedicated RTX 2050 version it's €1,299. Well, there aren't too many 14-inch laptops with similar specs out there at the moment. I was doing a search with the ones that I can buy, and the HONOR MagicBook 14 was definitely the best value. Now for those of you that want to take a look at the full spec list and details, I've placed the link down in the description below. So that's it from me today, and hopefully I've covered everything for you guys, but of course if there is anything I've missed, or you've got any questions, or even want me to run a specific test on the MagicBook 14, then just ask in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, smash a thumbs up. If you didn't, hit the thumbs down twice, and I'll see you guys in the next one.